Hello and welcome to the Green Profit Academy Pros podcast. This show digs into the challenges in growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit. I'm Christeen Era.
And I'm Steve Bousquet. We are the green industry experts in profit, growth, and leadership.
Hello and welcome to today's Green Profit Academy Pros podcast. Today we have a special guest, one of my close friends and green industry leaders and thought leaders that I've been associated with for about 20 years. His name is Don Zerby of Ecolawn. He has been in the lawn application business for over 45 years. Today we're going to discuss the challenges that he has faced and how he has accomplished building the business of his dreams. Welcome to today's show, Don.
Thanks so much, Steve and Christine, for inviting me.
Well, we're glad you're here. You are one of our absolute favorite people, and you have been an exceptional student to work with over the years and improving your profit in your business. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today, Don. Thank you for making the time.
My pleasure.
Yes. So we're going to jump right in and we're going to ask Don to tell us a little bit about himself and his background in the lawn care industry. And I know Steve and I are very familiar with his story, which makes it one of our favorites. But we're going to let Don share his story with you today.
Gosh, thanks, you guys. It's really a pleasure, and I can't believe it's been this long. I remember seeing the veterans in our industry and thinking, wow, boy, they've been doing this for a long time. And then somewhere, I guess I blinked and maybe I've become one of those guys. So, I started out as a child. We didn't have any money. I was 14 years old. My mom was a bus driver. She had trouble paying the monthly bills. And I had a paper route before that. I convinced my mom to let me use her credit card to get a lawnmower. And my brother-in-law built a trailer that went onto the back of my 10-speed bike. And I would drive around the neighborhood treating maybe 10 or 12 lawns within a few blocks of my house. The local newspaper called and asked if they could put a picture of that trailer and a little article in the paper. Well, that was August of 1977. The phone has not stopped ringing since then. So we had two trucks. I remember having two trucks before I was old enough to drive either of them. But when Bob came into the business, it expanded our horizons, and we got to go put in landscapes for people and expand our market area, so it was better. Over about the next 15 years after that, we bought 7 trucks, and maybe I had 14 employees. And, so I remember at age 18, I was vice president of Ohio Landscape Association. Somebody called up and said, we want you to be president. I said, well, that'd be fine, except I don't really know how I'm going to pay the electric bill this month. And if I can't pay the electric bill, maybe I shouldn't be representing myself as the guy to lead this group of several hundred contractors. So I declined. In 1988, we pursued every landscaper's dream of buying a property. So I bought a commercial property, a couple acres on a big road with lots of visibility. So in the next 4 years, I remember painting, and rebuilding, and putting up shelves. And I thought it was really cool. One day, the bank, who was one of my customers, called and said, Don, we're calling the loan. I had no idea what that meant. He had a pretty serious tone in his voice, so I thought, well, it must mean something that I should be paying attention to. And I called the bank back and said, well, what's that mean? He said, well, that means we don't want you to be our customer anymore. Well, how does that even work? Well, you haven't paid us in 6 months, and when that happens, we have the ability to tell you that you can't be our customer. So that started a chain of events. But at the same time, somebody from the IRS came along and She knocked on the door. She said, "You haven't paid your 941s in a long time." And I had no idea what a 941 was. She just said, "Since you haven't paid it, we're going to do 100% penalty," which was about as foreign to me as the bank calling the loan, but I knew that things weren't good.
Don, how old were you at this point?
Mid-20s, brand new baby in the little bassinet thingy, brand new wife.
So the IRS shows up, the bank's calling the note, you have a brand new baby, a new wife, and then what?
That was pretty scary. It was really scary. That lady from the IRS said, "We'll take the property. All those trucks, we'll just take them." So I said, "Well, what if I give you $50 a week?" "No, no, 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 no. You need to give it all to us now." And I knew that we had to take some extreme action. We weren't doing things right. My brother was handling design build, landscape design build, and he's a craftsman, so his work was very slow and deliberate, but it had nothing to do with profitability. My responsibilities were landscape maintenance and lawn care. Our lawnmowers were old and they needed to be replaced with expensive new ones, and we couldn't afford that. But this little lawn care thing where I would go out and fertilize somebody's lawn for $28 didn't cost very much to do. So although the dollar amounts were small, then I knew that the net dollars were big. So I told Bob, well, all we need to do is just get rid of all these employees, sell the property, sell the skid steers and chainsaws and dump trucks, and be this little lawn care company. And he said, "You're out of your mind because you're not going to do it with $28. You didn't pay $100,000 or whatever it was to the IRS with $28 lawn care." I didn't recognize at the time that my dear brother was trying to protect me from the real world. I thought that it was oblivion, and I blamed him for it, which was really wrong on my part. I regret it to this day. So I remember telling him, my half of the thing then is for sale. He didn't want to sell. I told him, well, I'm going to sell my half. And things got ugly for quite a while. So I sent out a letter to all my landscape friends saying that I was having a garage sale, and they all came along and said, "Well, Don, I thought, well, you were going so well, it's doing so good." One guy come along and bought this dump truck. And I remember taking the money. It was $12,000 that we sold it for. He gave me cash, and I remember taking that money to the big IRS building downtown Cleveland, and I found the lady that had been coming by. Handed her that money. She goes in the back room, and she comes back out with a receipt that said zero balance. I don't remember any of the dollar amounts anymore, except that the amount owing was much more than this $12,000. And that was one of the most profound moments of my life, is being handed that zero balance receipt, because I knew somebody had done me a huge favor and I didn't understand it. The babies in the carrier thing, I'm in this big building downtown Cleveland with this baby. And I thought, you know what? I can never allow this to happen again. I can never put my family in this. I can never jeopardize them like this ever again. I have to get smart. So I took the 200 lawn care customers that we had been doing in the landscape business and went out and built a business around this. Didn't know what I didn't know, but I went and I worked real hard every day.
Good. And what you're sharing, Don, is very common. Your story starts out with a need that you needed to help with the family finances, and you stepped up to the plate. And then through that experience in your life, you developed a craft, and you fell in love with this craft, which is, in the green industry, the lawn care, the landscape, the maintenance, and this, kind of became your way. And it's very common. And Steve and I have worked with, several business owners where this has happened with, where it's very common where, especially in this industry and in the trade industries too, an individual knows their craft. They're really, really good at something. And then all these other, big business obligations start rolling in, and these business owners get blindsided. And this is a very common and humbling experience. And sometimes I think for these business owners, in my experience in working with them, it can be embarrassing as well because they feel like they should have known. And we've had several conversations around this to where you can go to school, you could go to college for this stuff, you can get a master's in business, you can get an associate's degree, whatever it is, and you still may not know what you need to know to successfully run a business. And you kind of can get rolled by that, and humbled and just kind of taken by surprise when these things happen.
Boy, is that the truth. So the other component that creeps in there somewhere along the lines is that, if the opposite of embarrassed is proud, we don't want anyone to know that we don't know all the stuff that you got to know.
Yeah.
And so we hide it. And the unintended victims that I've seen 1,000 times are the wives and the children that are trusting you to do the right thing. It doesn't occur to them that you don't know what to do. And so you end up on this deserted island of where do I go? Who do I call? And, so for me, after going through that IRS experience and the bank experience, I realized, oh my gosh, I've just put my wife and daughter into a completely unacceptable environment that I just can't let ever happen again.
So then what was the next step that you took, Don? Like, so you decided, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do the lawn care application thing. And you got the IRS paid off, the bank's all settled up. Then what was happening? And for how long?
After that, so to satisfy those obligations, we sold the commercial property and we sold all of our equipment. I kept this old pickup truck and a little spreader and went out and did lawns. And at this point, I was in all this denial. I thought that it was employees that landed, bad employees that landed me here. It took a long time for me to, look internally and say, hey, it starts here. I went out and did lots of hard work and put flyers on every door I could find. Then went to a convention one time and they had these ride-on spreaders that could go fast and you didn't have to push and lift. So I bought one of those things and then kind of maxed out my ability to produce with that thing. My wife at the time steps in as handling the books. And that was good because it was helpful, bad because she was my wife. Don't do
Was
just
she a
FYI.
trained bookkeeper, Don? Was she a bookkeeper by trade?
Oh no, 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 no. She was
Hmm.
my wife and had a structured brain, but take away from that is think twice before you invite your wife to be your partner in business, and then just don't do it. In 2004, I'd been at a national convention and I met a guy who was talking about the legalities of lawn care treatments. And he asked me, what would I do if I spilled weed killer where it wasn't supposed to be spilled? What legal coverage do I have, or what insurance coverage do I have? And that was another completely foreign concept to me. So I developed a friendship with that guy as we worked through answering that question and several others like it. That friendship ended up where I hired a consultant that had been a longtime consultant to small and medium-sized companies. And he said, well, by golly, you've got to know your numbers. And I learned that my properties were not priced properly, that I had to charge based on my expenses, my circumstances, not the competitor's price sheet that had fallen out of their truck and I picked it up when they weren't looking. So um, so I learned about that and got better and better at that and began to set up systems. And the relationship with that coach lasted nearly 20 years. and accomplished lots of really good things. The really common problems associated with small business continued during this time. As the business grew, you had to know mechanicals of trucks. Employees had to come on and be motivated to work, and I could never find good employees, and I never had enough money. So the business had gotten bigger and bigger, but there were still all of these internal problems that were nearly as terrifying as the IRS agent
Mhm.
coming along, because the whole thing was so dependent on me. What if I don't know, got run over by a truck or got sick or died? What would happen to the thing?
So how old are you now in the middle of the story? Are you 40, 45 at this point?
Yeah, I was 40 when I hired the consultant,
Okay.
first consultant.
Mhm.
And
And before you were working with the consultant, how much were you grossing about a year?
oh golly, two 100, 200, $300,000.
Okay.
So your annual revenue was about 300,000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know that in 2009, our annual revenue was 300-ish thousand dollars.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and it sounds like some of the things that you're sharing is, you moved from that, you know, kind of trying to establish the company, not knowing what you didn't know, and then your perspective, was shifted from some pretty hard lessons that happened, which is very common, with business owners. And then you started, working with a coach or a consultant, which is ideal, where there was enough pain, it sounds like, in your business journey, where you finally said enough is enough, something's got to give, and when you share that whole story around, like, oh, picking up my competitor's price sheet. Yeah, I could almost picture a business owner doing something like that, which is another common mistake in business is, let me price myself as my competitor would price themselves, so I'm competitive, and not really realizing what is unique about what you are offering as a business owner and as a service to your community. And I know that, in knowing you over the years, and you sharing your story, there was something that you did in your business where you realized there was the way that you serviced your customers and the product that you created for them that was unique, that where you were no longer, competition. The other people in your industry, in your area, were not competition, because you stood on your own with the way that you delivered your services.
Boy, that's for sure. That was really not an easy realization. People always said, that there was character. The people have always cited my personality as being different than others.
Mhm.
And as I learned about grass, I originally began to think that, my knowledge of grass with my personality that people seemed to like would be the winning combination, so all the people would just beat a path to my door and life would be great. I didn't realize at that point that you had to steer those. You had to start with the fundamentals, the fundamental characteristics, and then build on it from there if it was to be a sustainable thing.
Mhm.
It was not dependent on you. In other words, I had to identify the characteristics of my own personality, find out what was important to the people that were buying our services, but not all the people, just the right people. Well, what's a right person?
Right.
Or we call them ideal clients. And that sounded like a really easy question. Turns out it wasn't so easy. It was very easy to figure out who wasn't the right client. And as this transpired, somebody suggested that we write down the specifics of who is our ideal and who's not our ideal, and we made it a major priority to find out what our strengths were, both individually as well as my company. So we have 12 people in our company right now, and we spend a lot of time helping each other identify our strengths and then looking for opportunities to harvest those strengths in the most predictable way.
Hmm.
So tell us about that, Don. How do you find out your strengths? How do you find out your teammates' strengths?
Well, really, it starts with a curiosity driven mindset. I read a book called Change Your Question, Change Your Life that on the surface sounds like a really simple book, but it introduces a concept called learner living, where the author explains how you can choose to be curious about things that you encounter in life, or conversely, to be judgmental about them. It's really a way of accepting responsibility for your own mindset and then steering. So when you start out from that point of view, and then Steve, you had asked about strengths. We discovered an organization called the Gallup organization, and they have a product called 34 Strong. I don't know if it's a product, but it's a line of thinking called 34 Strong. And every human has these 34 strengths. Some will be higher than others. And in our top five of those 34 strengths, those are really the top three are our genius, surrounded by numbers 4 and 5, which are the pillars that support the genius. And the top 10 are really where we get things done. And at the same time, we explore the ones in the middle and the ones on the bottom, being careful to not think of those as weaknesses, just strengths that we don't have as much proficiency at as the really top ones. So while this is happening, while we're exploring our own strengths from a curiosity driven mindset, we get to take a closer look at the people around us. And instead of saying, gosh, he's just a big jerk because he did this or did that, following this logic allows us to think, okay, I might not understand this part about his personality or hers, but look at how they shine. Look at how they're the champion at this other task that's required in our business. How can we harvest that? How can we show them that that's their superpower and then help them to harvest it? So combining this recognition of individual strengths with a curiosity or learner driven mindset, really a life changing win win has been created because you help the other person to recognize their own strengths. And I'm looking at a sheet on the wall that says, in order to harvest our strengths, we need to be aware of them. And to perfect them, we need to focus on them. And when we do that, we introduce to the people around us their own superpowers that, as you identify them, they'll say, that's just what I do. Every single time they say, that's just what I do.
So Don, how does that show up in a lawn care company? How does that show up in an application business? Give me
You know,
an example if you could.
that's a great question because for a long time, the mass marketers in the green industry have done their advertising and saying, oh boy, you can just by spraying these chemicals on your lawn, you're going to force it to be green. Okay, that might be fine if it's 60 degrees and raining every second day. But if you want a truly healthy lawn, I mean, look, start at the beginning. Think about your home. Think about all of the things that both of you guys have done. Think for a minute deliberately about all of the efforts that got you to that spot. Really, our role and what a privilege it is for these people that have worked that hard to have all that stuff, for them to call us and say, hey, can you help me to enhance the value of my property, financially enhance it or emotionally enhance it, so that my kids have soft grass to go out and play ball in. We learned a long time ago that these people love their homes and they've extended us the privilege of asking our help to take care of that home. What a huge opportunity that is. So I spent my lifetime building this program that makes it so they'll have the best lawn that they've ever had. By golly, there's no commodities happening here. It's not the same stuff on this lawn, on that lawn, on the next lawn. I want to know, Christine, what's important to you? Tell me about your kids. Tell me about
Hmm.
your husband. How do you use your lawn? Why did you choose this neighborhood, not that neighborhood? Steve, what do you guys do on the weekends that's so important around your lawn? Of course, these are rhetorical questions, but
And it's a curiosity. I mean, I think that that's where you're going. Kind of the theme is that staying curious for your customers, for yourself, in that learner living mindset.
Mhm.
So share with me one way that you take this like strengths, curiosity, and implement it with your team.
So in our team, as you recognize the strengths that these people have, you can help them steer themselves into using their superpowers. And the result is this assertive or win-win result. We have an individual here that was hired to organize our shop and be an apprentice technician. The opportunity suddenly presented itself where we needed to fill an office manager position. And as we considered the strengths of all of the people that were already here, I invited this guy to see if he would like to go into the office and use it. He has outstanding organizational skill sets with a high learner was one of his major strengths. He ends up being my office manager, and he fixed things that I didn't know had been broken. The previous office manager who had a financial background, somewhat of a financial background, lots of experience, and as it turns out, was the A player, which is how we refer to our ideal uh, employees. The A player that got me here wasn't the A player to get me there. I mean, she had become stagnant, complacent in her position, and she was great at lots and lots of things, but this guy that I had hired to organize the shop and be an apprentice has now been in place for a year and has taken the administrative side of my business and just kind of propelled it way further than I could have imagined.
You lined up his strengths with a need in the company.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and from what I'm hearing you say as well, Don, is because you implemented this curiosity mindset in your business and you continued to be open to, realizing I don't know what I don't know. What else is there? What else is there that I don't know? And, realizing as well, and I know this from working with you over the years, is you have continued to realize that you do not need to be the person to solve the problem, that you do not need to be the champion, of that task or that role in your business, and that it's okay that you don't understand it, but you will be doing something about it. And I've seen this journey, with you and your team over the years to where, the course correction is constantly happening. And every time it happens, you guys gain a new perspective and you gain traction in growing and scaling your business.
It's just it's just unbelievable the potential that happens. And I'm glad you brought that up because for all this time, it's really my whole life. I thought that in order to get anything done, I was the one that had to do it. I've always been the salesman here. I'm the one that does that stuff. But as one of our people develops, this guy went and spent 6 months building a relationship with one of those old old school industrial magnates, I guess they are. Anyways, a really high end property. And just walking in here, my office manager told me that that property has materialized. They're sending a prepayment check. This property is 12 times larger than financially larger than our average. And I've never seen it. I've never been to the property. And the beauty of this is that it's becoming a system and its success is based on the strengths of others, not me. So I don't have to be the champion, or I'm not the champion. We can recognize the other people's strengths, which is a motivator, so they win. When you're winning, you want to go do it more. Finally, after all this time, recognizing the talents of the other people around me, and my own talents and limitations too, for that matter, I can get out of the way of these brilliant people around me. A very cool spot to be in.
So Don, we've known each other for a long time, and our conversations have changed over the years. So just share with the audience what our conversations used to sound like compared to the conversations that you're having now. Now we're talking about the learner living. We're talking about living in strengths, not being the champion. How did our conversations used to sound, say, 7 to 10 years ago?
Oh man, a little bit different. The, the beatings will continue until morale improves. Why is he so stupid? These people are just idiots, aren't they? Man, oh man.
And moving from how the conversations that we used to have to the conversations that we have today, watching the growth of your company grow in exponential ways. What's the feeling today when you go to work as opposed to when you had to talk yourself into going to work on Monday morning 10 years ago?
Um, sometimes people say, "Well, when are you gonna retire? What's it gonna look like when you're done?" And man, this is more fun now. As you said to me one time, Steve, it's like you saved all your life to go on a trip to Disney World, and now you just walk through the front door. Why would you want to turn around and go back home? And I just love that analogy because now I get to see what it's like. I mean, I still worry about stuff, but it's probably my personality. But we have a general manager, and we have my office manager. We're implementing a succession plan that gives them some ownership, and I don't ever have to fully consummate that plan, but it kind of helps to guarantee the continuation. One of the private equities offered us a buyout here maybe a year or so ago that would have been fine, except that all of really my life's efforts would have been kind of down the tubes. I went to the website of that company and it said, get your first treatment, $29.95. It was just sending out a message that's completely different from the one that I've created. So my general manager, Sean, and David share the same characters, the same values. And that's really rewarding. So, how does it feel to go to work now? Man, I don't know. I don't think I'm ever really at work. I just get to go look at grass and talk to really smart people all the time. You know,
Yeah. Well,
just
I know, Don, you and I were just on a call earlier this week because you've been a client of ours at my other company, Core Growth Strategies, where we've helped you get your numbers really lined up. And we were kind of chatting it up, and I was chatting with your team and your manager and your office manager. And you were out on a beautiful sunny day doing the one thing that you love the most. And this is something that we had talked about when we started working together is as you grew and scaled your company, like what does it look like for you? And you really love that kind of sales, role in your company where you could go look at properties and you can sometimes as you wish connect with customers and you were kind of struggling thinking, no, I have to be the numbers guy and I have to run the operations and I have to do this and I have to do that. And our conversation started, well, with what do you love to do? And this was all these years ago. And I loved jumping on a call with you and your team. And there you were on a sunny day, surrounded by all this green grass in beautiful, downtown Ohio in that area that you're at. And you were happy doing what you love to do. And it wasn't running the numbers and it wasn't running the operations. It was being out and connecting with your ideal customers.
what a great example of it. While in the meantime, Sean, our general manager, is this organizational superpower of putting all of the things in order and scheduling and supporting the fixing and and then David is doing all the profit first stuff and just, talking with Jamie and I'm driving around looking at grass. It's just, that's not going to work. It's just really, I guess I don't know. Is that going to work? Do I really work?
So, Don, and that's interesting because I remember one time you were struggling, you were off like 11 bags of fertilizer. You're like, this inventory thing, and I've been trying to figure this out for 5 years, and I'm 11 bags off, and this is ridiculous. And I'm like, Don, why are you trying to figure out inventory? Let me introduce you, or budget. Then you were trying to put a budget together, and you couldn't put the budget together. I said, Don, let me introduce you to someone that does budgets. Let me introduce you someone that can help you set up your inventory system. And I introduced you to Christeen, and that was a few years ago. And that you've been working with their team since then. And I know David and Jamie have really been knocking it out of the park as far as financial statements and predictive statements and accuracy and everything. And just getting the right strengths in the right seats and having your business where you're focusing on what you enjoy and letting other people be the champion has led to a lot of your growth. And I don't want to get into whole numbers, but I know that you have, back when you were doing $300,000 in 2009, how many customers did you have about?
I mean, I don't know, probably 600-ish. I don't remember
600.
exactly.
And I would estimate you're over 2,500 customers today.
Yeah, right.
All right. So you went from 600 to over 2,500, and this is where the rubber, meets the road, right? Because a lot of people, well, you can't take care of your people, you can't train them, they can't work in their strengths. You can't do all the people stuff and be profitable and grow. But you have really demonstrated a case study model of taking care of your people, aiming their strengths, matching up your customers' needs and wants is the exact growth pattern that you took and to scale your business. So it kind of goes in not being the cheapest person in the market and not doing the 29.95. And so, you're a really great example of, doing what resonates with your team, your people, and your community, and living that every day. You exemplify that. And I know you're kind of a humble guy, but I just want to point out what you have accomplished in the last, 14 years is quite amazing and unique, not just in lawn care, but all of small business.
Mhm.
Well, thanks, Steve, for saying that. And yeah, we undervalue our strengths and we overvalue our weaknesses. So humble vulnerability is a good thing. So yeah, I suppose I've got some skills and I've certainly had just outstanding teachers. And when you combine the two, so not just the professional teachers, but my employees teach me stuff every day. That's what's so profound about the learner living or curiosity driven mindset combined with strengths is that somebody that was hired as a lawn care technician is handling that inventory system that you just mentioned. And now one of my lawn guys manages it, hands it to Sean, and I'm not even aware that it's been done, which gives me the space, mental space to chart a better course, solve a different challenge. As far as professional help is concerned, Christine, I met you in either 2017 or 2018.
It was 2018. Yeah.
18. And I remember in our initial conversation, I thought that I had it all figured out and was going to tell you that, well, I might let you do a little of this or a little of that. Well, that was before I started learning the value of curiosity. When you find somebody with these amazing strengths or you uncover these amazing strengths, I don't remember what the numbers are in 2018 versus now, but I bet you we doubled in growth, and that was under your guidance
Yeah.
in getting us there. So
Yes, your profitability has increased. One of the game changers that I remember from our first conversation is you were really struggling with trying to understand, the rhythm of your cash flow in your business. And what we uncovered was how the cash was being managed in your business. And, your company was living off of your prepays before they were being delivered. And once we corrected that and got in front of it and then really implemented the profit first system, that was a game changer for your business on not only how stable it was and how the cash flow, and the rhythm of the cash flow balanced out, but the growth that followed that naturally and also with intention based off of the conversations we had around implementing profit first and even pumpkin plan strategies, in our calls and really getting the numbers dialed in. Your business is a completely different business today, not just with the financial structure, the organizational structure, but the leadership structure. And this is just, over the past 3 to 4 years, the changes that have taken place in your business is just phenomenal to see.
It really is, and I get to see it every day. A couple hours ago, our insurance agent was in. By adjusting the dial on how we pay insurance premiums, we were able to save about $1,500. Well, here comes David with his organizational mindset and his ability to zero in other words, use his strength, his superpowers.
Yeah.
And this is one little thing that happened. So yeah, gosh, it's a lot of fun now. It is really, really fun.
And I think the biggest thing I hear from you, and I want to acknowledge, because I know it's not just you, but it's a team mindset, is you're not carrying the business on your back up the mountain on your own. It is
Yeah.
you and your team really working from their strengths. And it is a team effort. And I see it. I know I've talked to your team. My team has talked to your team. Steve has talked to your team. And I think I could speak for all of us where I am just as confident talking to one of your team and executing something or sharing an idea as I am with you.
Isn't that neat?
It is. So, Don, what do you see as the future of your business and how do you plan to keep evolving with it?
There's a group called Small Giants, and one of the teachers said the common denominator in this group is they've chosen to be great rather than big. And I really love that because there's all kinds of great big lawn care operators. They seem to measure their worth by how many trucks or how many customers and how big, how many branches. And I don't care about any of that stuff. We have 3 generations of families whose properties we service. So multi-million dollar properties people have entrusted in our care. I don't want it to be great big, but I want it to be really great. So I want the freedom to go home and paint something on a Tuesday afternoon if I feel like it, or hop in the car with my dear wife and go to see our daughter in New York. That freedom means a lot. At the same time, I love what I do. So I want the people around me to have the opportunity to keep doing what they're doing. The profitability, the financial end of things, I want it to provide security for character-driven, like-minded individuals that choose to put their energies here. That's where it's going.
And I think that's important, Don, is that people understand, business owners can understand when we say scale and grow, scaling and growing your company is going to be something different for you than it is for someone else. Someone might want to scale and grow and increase that revenue and grow their business bigger, or they can scale and grow their company by improving the operations and the size that they have, and implementing systems and training a better team and just leveling up a business. So I think that's a great point, is that as business owners, we need to understand, what does scaling and growing our business means to us? What does that mean? And also make sure that we are scaling and growing our business for our dream and not based off of somebody else's goal, whether it be another professional peer or somebody in the area. Being true to ourselves and what we want with our goals.
Sure. Take complete ownership of who you are. Be unapologetically you.
Yeah.
Mike McAllowitz said to me.
So, Don, as we're wrapping up, what advice would you give to that the 18-year-old Don Zerby that was asked to be the president of the Ohio State Landscape Association? If you could have whispered in his ear, what would you have said?
It's not about the grass. You have to find teachers that you trust and then be willing to listen to their advice. They know more than you do. It's all about character, man. Those people love you and they want what's best for you because it'll be better that way. And you won't have some lady from the IRS saying that she's going to put chains on your doors. Maybe you won't have to worry as much about your young child or your nieces and nephews being homeless because you're too busy managing your own ego to listen to real advice. So you got to work hard, man.
Well, thank you very much, Don. Christine, would you like to ask a final question?
No, I think we covered some great topics today. So I want to thank you, Don, for being vulnerable, sharing your stories with your challenges and your mistakes, the decisions that swayed you into a new direction and gave you a different focus. And I love the story that you share of where you started off in your business and the journey that you made. And I love seeing that you have built a beautiful business with a team that loves to come to work every day and clients that are over the moon with your services.
I'm very fortunate. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a real pleasure. You guys have a great day today.
Thanks so much, Don. We'll talk soon.
Okay, goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Green Profit Academy Pros Podcast,
The show that digs into the challenges of growing a lawn care and landscape business while maximizing your profit.